So Kim, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me for this, Don. Good to see you, Aaron. Good to see you, Elaine.
Kim, what is cake
Cake
and
is
what
not.
are you doing?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, Jason and I, my co-founder and I, we're super passionate about helping entrepreneurship and startup teams and founders. So that's always been, what we wake up to do every single day. So the best thing we could do with that is to help on the equity part because it's so difficult for founders to understand equity. The jargon is very complicated. Understanding contracts, they're very difficult to understand. So we basically want to remove all the friction with using equity and then take the real power of equity, which is really to motivate an awesome startup team. So acquiring the best talent and then putting them on that journey of growing the value of your equity. That means that they can go and focus on building the best products and helping their customers and not have to worry about equity.
And Kim, why do you think it is so complicated? Because it kind of really shouldn't be, should it? And thank goodness cake equity exists. But I guess what is the background and why it's so difficult and why it trips so many companies up?
Yeah, it's well, first you can't help but go back to the contracts, right? Who really understands a 50-page shareholder agreement? There's a lot of clauses there, and you even get slightly different answers if you ask a lawyer. So this was not built for a startup team that just needs to focus on customer first. So the jargon itself, understanding these contracts, and inside the contracts, they're built in a certain way because it's very, very important. Because a startup can, when it goes well, create a lot of value, and that value is contained in the equity. And of course, investors are betting on seeing that exponential growth. So they're fine with putting in a bit of money and have a company that is burning money to get that big return in the long run. And that's an amazing opportunity for startups to see that happen. But then to make sure that this journey goes well with the equity value, we need all these kind of rules in place. I'm with the strong conviction that founders don't need to understand these rules. I see equity as a technology almost, and good technology needs to be invisible. So it needs to be behind the scenes, and you just need to get the value of the equity, which is really about, I can acquire the best team, I can motivate them, I can get the best supporters and investors to invest into the journey that is an entrepreneur journey to build a startup. So I think a lot of time, this equity has existed for some time. So, everybody's trying to kind of put more rules into it and make it more, they're not trying to make it more complicated, but as the stakes get higher, you're trying to solve that with kind of technology. And we don't have a standard, which is why we set out at Cake to make not only like an Australian standard for equity, but a global standard for equity. So once we get that standard, we can remove a lot of the legal language and the jargon that sticks out in the face of the entrepreneurs, and we just get this kind of super highway that each next step is a one-click away. So we like to call the Cake platform a one-click global equity platform for motivation.
And Kim, in terms of co-founders, how did you guys meet? What's that genesis story?
Yeah, so I arrived, I guess, a bit more than 7 years back on the Gold Coast. Was doing some other business, had been involved with multiple startups, and really wanted to do 100% startup. And I was kind of looking for someone. I think Jason was as well when I met him. We're both kind of looking for someone that were complementing our skills and had that passion that we both had for entrepreneurship. And then we started actually helping each other on a Gold Coast Hub project, and I saw how well he was executing and how well he complemented my skills and really, really good sales skills, which is super important in a startup, especially in the beginning. I'm good with the technology, so it was a really good match. Burning passion, burning desire from both of us to make this happen. And lots of pieces before with experience and knowledge had been built up to lead to this. Plus, for my part, I'd felt the pain with equity before, trying to set up an option pool for the team. And I felt it was unfair that people couldn't get ownership in something that I thought was going to be big in my other company, which it did. So I felt the pain, and I wanted to solve this pain.
Yeah, awesome.
And in the journey you've started, how long ago? 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, so we did start in the kind of blockchain space and wanting to create more liquidity in private equity, trying to use blockchain technology for that. But we quickly realized you need a market for that, and trying to pivot towards security tokens, all of that, build the rules of equity into the contracts. But we figured out that nobody's really solving the hard problems, which is the legal and the compliance, the financial, that are all touching equity and makes it super, super complicated. So we took a step back and just let's solve a real problem for real people before we introduce all this blockchain technology, which is a repeating pattern. When new technologies come, we try and force technology first, but we have to step back and look at what's the real problem here. And there was clearly an underserved kind of cap table management solution in Australia. So that was a really good starting point to just say, well, how do we make it easy for companies to understand who owns what? There's lots of details in this journey that I can talk about. We built an advanced contract engine, all of these things to kind of solve it in a good way. We can dive into that if that's interesting.
And you talked about how important sales is at the start of any startup's journey.
Yeah.
And you were saying, Jason, that was kind of his lane of genius, I guess. So maybe can you talk about that journey of selling this product in the first place? Like you mentioned it's a real problem that you're solving. How hard is it to convince the market that they need something like this, that it'll actually make their life more frictionless? Talk about that journey and did you think you had product market fit pretty early on? Have you had to, I guess, iterate the product a bit to find that product market fit? Can you talk about that journey? Because I think that's actually where a lot of founders, find it super tough.
Absolutely. Definitely something continue to reflect on, both the sales and product growth and product market fit. Just throwing out these terms here, but I think it's a constant learning journey. And just to touch briefly on the product market fit, sometimes it feels like it's this elusive thing that you're always chasing, and it can almost work against you. So it can't be too idealistic. At some point, you just got to say, well, we got product market fit, or but we can get into that. So I think that's definitely always an ongoing journey for us to understand that and see how important that is. But in the beginning, Jason is phenomenal at selling and persuading people and convincing people, which is such a strong weapon to have as a startup. It's also dangerous because it means you can sell anything. And as we know, a good product needs to stick for some time, right? So
yeah.
In our particular journey, we started much more as a sales-led and even service-led company. We launched a law firm and had internal lawyers that were running that in parallel or together with Cake. I think that was, it's always easy to look in the rear view and say it was because of exactly that. So it was very deliberate. We wanted to end up where we are going to end up, but most times it's not. But certainly it helped us learn about equity and make sure that all the rules and the structure and everything were real and proper working. When you're doing something that has legal implications, but we're building a software online platform that has standard contracts where you can pretty much set up an option plan with one click and give option offers. Very, very simple, just with these one-click solutions. But behind it, there's legal rules and contracts in place. So we have to find that balance, that we're creating a SaaS platform, but we are not legally representing all the contracts. The companies themselves are with or without lawyers. So it's finding that balance where we're guiding them through best practices and helping them make decisions, but we're not carrying the responsibility of that. So especially when you're disrupting a bit, so we certainly want to disrupt the lawyers in the sense of taking away a lot of the admin work that they're doing, so they can focus more on the thinking, which is the most valuable. And I think all the modern law firms agree with this statement, the ones that see it the cake way, the super easy way, simple way. So where you don't get awkward contracts that then needs to be modified and you get slowed down. So the more you can be set up by standards, it just becomes one click when you need to do the next thing. And the decisions that you're making becomes much easier. So again, you're not going to screw up so much, because there's a million ways that founders can screw up with their equity, especially when you are pressured and you don't quite understand and you have imposter syndrome and you are speaking to someone who has a lot of experience potentially with investors, and you're so much under pressure. So you can screw up a lot. So we went on the journey from, and I'm diving a little bit into the specifics on our journey, but we started as a sales-led and product-led, and we set up the law firm. And then we kind of had to do this shift to product-led growth, because we could see that this, there's a difference between a linear growing and an exponential, and we wanted to have a big impact in the world. So that's the shift to product-led growth, and making one of those steps was to implement a freemium solution and a SaaS solution. It was challenging because some of the things around equity is seen as transactional, like doing a raise, while the options are more an ongoing thing because you have the vesting every month. So and then you have all the challenges around the raise with legal, and if you screw up a little bit or the product is not perfect, then it's easier for the founders to come and blame the software because they're not raising money. So that conflict is a super big challenge. So it was more easier to deal with the options, and you get that really nice retention because you have an ongoing good thing happening when everybody is vesting their options along the way. And then from that, you build the brand and the trust and the understanding. So we can get to eventually one-click cash in, one-click cash out kind of scenarios, where we remove a lot of the dance and the friction and the slowdown for startups to get cash in to the company, which often is oxygen for their survival. So that shift, we were growing 27% month-on-month growth for the time there, hitting the almost 50K a month. So that was a nice trajectory, but we shifted to product growth, and that was a couple 2,000 or something a month.
Kim, do you want to just talk about what you mean by product-led growth? Because I think, as you said, it can mean different things to different people.
Yes, and the product-led growth has been a long journey for us, and we'll continue to do that. So one thing is theory, and getting theory to work in a practical manner and with the mindset of the company. So what we mean with product-led growth is to use the product to scale everything that we're doing, to remove the high touch from any one of our team on the product and helping the customers. So we're basically building a software platform that can promote itself, that can convert the customers from seeing our website into signing up, into using the product and creating a habit loop, so that they get value from our product very easily and consistently, and they stay happy paying customers and they start referring. So a lot of the ARC, the PART metrics kind of tie together with the product growth, and you're looking at each of these conversion steps, using the product as much as you possibly can to make these things happen. Now, there's a lot of theory out there. So there's like product-led sales, product-led marketing, trying to divide down, okay, how do we do the sales with the product? How do we, again, remove the need for founders that are going to sign up on a platform to talk with our people too much? Ideally, and again, it's always something to strive towards when we're speaking ideals, is everyone at Cake is a knowledge worker that is thinking how they can learn and spend most of their time learning about the customer and how best to solve their problems, and then adjusting an engine that kind of can really, really scale and provide much more value than the human interaction. So a lot of technology is there, but also just how you create the product with the copy and the material and all of those things.
Kim,
Yeah,
could you
great.
like that decision to shift to product-led growth? Like, I imagine if you're getting good month-on-month growth, that's not necessarily an easy decision. Was there tension in the team in making that choice to switch to product-led?
Yeah, for sure, but it wasn't. I don't think it was like unconstructive tension, or like it was okay. We're ready to do this. I think there was at that time we got a really good advisor that we needed at that time to shift that perspective. Dean McAvoy, that was super helpful at the time to come in with strong opinions and help us shift that and keep beating on this product growth. So I think that was just like a few days, and I think both me and Jason, and we had Johan at the time as well helping out as another co-founder. He came in for a period to help out. I think it was just like, okay, we're gonna do this. Great, let's go. And then we decided to pay our own salaries, dividing by our MRR, kind of just to say we're gonna get $1,000 each, and then we have to grow that to kind of make sure we were aligned with making this happen. And yeah, but then starting that, there's been a lot of friction and tension and problems and not belief as well. I think that's it. Always for me comes back to the belief. You got to pick a few things and then you got to double down on those, and that's where you are in that two mindsets of your idealistic belief, I'm going to change the world like this, and then you have realism right here, right? And if you're just in the idealistic, you're not going to make the right steps to get there. So you need to be in two worlds at the same time, and that can be extremely scary space. But when we have chosen a few things to believe in at Cake and stuck to them, then we have made them happen. So it's, of course, this takes an incredible team that is aligned and just have a continuous attitude of, fuck it, let's go. When the problems just seem big, let's just go. Sorry, I'm swearing.
Okay.
But that attitude, I can't say it more clear. It's Charlie brought that in, our fantastic COO, and that just became a little bit of a mantra in the company. When it's too hard, okay, just screw the details, let's just go. And we've had several things with this throughout the time that I'm personally very proud of, that we have succeeded in that belief. One of the things was product-led growth and continuing to do that. And for me, I think the most important is to see that the engine is working using these learnings that you can say they are, right? And we have definitely seen that, and we can measure things. And then there's the external validation of it that helps the brand a lot, but it also helps each person at your team that has different levels of the need for external validation, if I'm to put it like that. So it's an incredible tool for us to get recognition from the outside. But, I guess from my perspective, the engine needs to work with these theories. So on the product-led growth front, it's one of those very hard journeys where some people were not believing in it. And it's been very painful, almost created some silos in the company that we had to break down. And going from idealistic, at a certain point, we just bought all the product-led growth onboarding books from Wes Bush, and just everybody read this. I was similar to venture deals. Please read this. It's very aligned with how we're thinking about making these things simpler and fairer and stuff like that. So we've done these kind of things, but it's only when you really see the engine working. So you got to stick with it. So on the product-led growth is one of those where we just strong belief we're going to make this happen. And the engine is working and we're continuing to improve on it. And we're getting the external validation of this as well as one of the leaders. Secondly, on the ESOPs, choosing that and not trying to do too many things. We stuck to that, which shifted more and more towards this is the best tool for empowering your startup team. And then with attracting the best advisors and supporters and investors on the journey. We've stuck with that. And that ESOP engine has really worked well for us, but there was a lot of friction to get there. The going towards profitability to make that decision also something with internal friction and not believing enough in. Again, when the external validation comes from investors in the market, then it's great. It aligns. So it's finding that balance, and each person is different in needing those.
And how do you, when those inevitable periods of time of that healthy tension that you mentioned before, what's your approach to handling that when that comes up?
Yeah, I think it does feel like, for me, tying into my deep personality of this, possibly also coming from an engineer background, technology, that it's a consistent behavior where you keep building and iterating a lot, then you're gonna implement the belief. You're gonna do that shift in society, implement your vision. You need to learn along the way, and I built tools around to create that conviction. And then as you see the beliefs, this sticking to this belief, and I think the team sees that, then you become stronger and stronger in saying, I'm gonna pick this belief, I'm gonna make this happen in the iterative process. So there needs to be an underlying source of energy for that, some sort of strength and passion, motivation, something to prove to the world, and tying into your own personality. So for me, it ties directly to every Monday morning I have to do my exercise, and there's pain in that, but it's that pushing through that friction is what makes it happen in the long run. So start the Monday well, I win that day, I win the week, I win the month, I win the year. It's that consistency, and each step becomes easier when I've done that morning friction there. So that's a theory, or I guess way of implementing everything in the company. It's that consistent behavior. In
And
parallel
how do
to
you,
that,
sorry, Kim, I don't mean to interrupt, but then, so that can totally see how you could be the catalyst for that, and your personality and your will, or your kind of key value that you pick as being something that you want to pursue, would absolutely be an initiation. How do you bring the rest of your team along with you in that as well? Because I think, that's obviously where sometimes that constructive conflict or that friction or tension comes up. How do you end up bringing everyone else along with that vision, with that initiative that you've lit a fire under in the first place?
I think it's that ties into leadership, or how I see leadership. So you need to bring people on the journey, and a big part of that is showing good behavior you want to see, that ties to your values that you've chosen. So you see them as good for yourself and society, but it's an opinion, of course. So showing extremely consistent behavior, that creates trust among people. And then, of course, making sure, maybe like I'm called sometimes a robot, or very, very optimized. And even when we're together in London, it's kind of the prize that I got in the end, to be very optimized. So, finding the right balance, and it's a continuous learning journey for me, to make sure also that the behaviors that I show are there's an underlying framework to create the outcome that we want. But we're different people, and it's the diversity that makes a good result. You can do so much more with a team than a single person can ever do, and that's the beauty that we're celebrating at Cake, and what we want to motivate for. So it has to be an incredible mission that everybody's aligned on, and it has to be, you have to create that continuous value in your equity, and you got to have an awesome journey, because ultimately that's what life is about, and so you want to be around people that are different than you, so not creating this is the perfect example of robot behavior and all of that. So all of that to say that striking that balance where, yes, it's maybe some of us have these more extreme things. I'm probably a bit extreme in the discipline and the kind of robot military way of doing some things, which is extremely strong. Now, if I promote that behavior in the way that I see it, then that, or too much the way I do things, that's probably not going to work well for the company, because there's different ways of doing this. And especially even, from a guy's perspective and a woman's perspective. So it's been a wonderful learning journey for me to have a person like Elise on the team, chief marketing officer, to really give me different perspective of even the small icons or emojis that we use on Slack when we're promoting something. A guy will typically use like, here's my muscle, kind of. But is that equally good for a woman and a man, for example, to promote that? So there's a lot of details that I think are important in how you create the behavior. So for me, it's like taking my own behavior, where I think there's a lot of powerful stuff for Cake and for the team, but I need to translate it into something that works optimally for a diverse team. I want to have diversity. We want to celebrate that. So you promote a lot, but equally you're serving people, kind of like servant leadership. You're being there to help and help them on their journey. So I like to talk about, there's an ikigai for the company, and there's an ikigai for each individual. So the company has a journey and each individual has a journey. For example, on the health part. So if health is going to the gym and that's the only way, that's just not going to fit everyone. And again, you're not bringing diversity in. So you want to be kind of you have strong opinions about health. This is a core value at Cake. So it has to be important to the team and to each individual, but each person has their journey. So promoting behaviors, but finding enough diversity. And I think that's always a challenge. One of the things that have worked really well at Cake is we set up a CHL habit team Slack channel, a bit inspired from Michael Badgoat's Puddle Pod, where you create accountability through these little groups. And it started with a little group of people to just have a 30-day goal on a little bit less beers in the weekend, because that was the goal of one of the persons, etc. And then we kept each other accountable. And that just actually grew into the whole company. So most people are using that on a daily basis. And it becomes really, for me, the number one value is when someone is sharing something about themselves and their life in a trusted context. So they're taking that step to show, here I am, which always builds the trust in the company, and taking that first step. But then more importantly, who goes behind and supports that. And then we integrate that in our all hands once a month, where we pick a CHL winner. So there's motivation on that. And that's very much looking at, well, who has really given a bit of themselves in a trusted environment, helped to create trust between people. Because when we show ourselves for good and bad, then we help others to trust you. And then, but who's been really good at helping each person on their journey. So that has worked fantastically well, and definitely want to see more of that in the company.
Yeah, the trust aspect, I think, is really key. Sounds like you have made a very conscious effort at Cake to build a diverse team and make sure that all of those diverse voices have a seat at the table and can make a contribution, and it's heard, and that the resolution of any conflict or friction is made possible by the fact that you've created this trust environment where people can agree, disagree, and have those very honest conversations, which I think is really important.
And it's a constant journey. I will always say we're 1% of the way, just because I believe in the potential of humans, and I believe in the potential of a group of people coming together. So just recently, we had another random idea that is working really well at our All Hands, which is just bringing different cultures. So a month ago, we had a Swedish theme. So we learned about some specific curiosity, funny things from Sweden. And yesterday, when we had our other All Hands for this month, we had the Philippine theme. And it just creates so much kind of just that learning from the different parts of the world. So again, we have a remote team, and culture in a remote team is probably 5 times the challenge of normal. You have a mix of kind of headquarters here, but then we have an office in Portugal with 5 engineers, and then we have individuals in different places. So we can get together and do activities the Portuguese team can do by themselves, but then you have individuals. So how do you kind of share that culture? How do you make sure everybody has a voice and can add their creativity and be liked and bring in that awesome diversity that is all around the world, that I think will create better products for all startups.
Given what has happened post-pandemic, people working remotely, companies that are wanting to be globally relevant, having to have teams in various parts of the globe, the companies that do that well, which is engage all of these teams culturally and in a values-based way, are the ones that are going to have an advantage, because that's how you scale your product globally, is by having a really strong team that is multinational and engaged. So it's one of the things that we try to look for in our founding teams, particularly as investors who are supporting companies that are scaling up specifically into 2 markets in the first place. So it's really thrilling to see, just to untack how you guys are approaching that and what's worked and what hasn't, understanding it's a work in progress. So I appreciate you being so transparent about that.
Yeah,
I think some of the interesting things that stick out for me, I mean, I personally, I think, have a bias towards co-foundership. It's just really hard to do things individually. And I guess I have that because I was once a sole founder, and you can sort of go fast, but you can't go far. And what you guys did to find each other was very impressive. But the glue that holds you together is that trust piece, that respect piece. And so really, really great to hear your sort of value of that, and underlying respect is diversity. If you don't have respect, you can't actually have diversity.
And that comes through a lot of understanding also. If we don't understand, we jump to conclusions, and then we don't communicate well. And it's when you have all that challenges ahead as a startup, you always feel you have a cliff in front of you no matter what. So to deal with that pressure, co-founders can really, really help each other during that journey. And I think then you build more and more a team that has the kind of shared value set and are aligned around the mission.
I love that you've habitualized like that behavior to build trust and respect. So even that 30-day sprint of accountability for a personal goal, but building those habits early. I think one thing we see are companies that end up dysfunctional that then try to bring these interventions in, but you've actually included them as part of your DNA from the beginning, which is like phenomenal. Credit to you and Jason and what you've built. I'm curious now, is because you're expanding into the US, so now scaling into another market, which introduces all new challenges. I see Jason traveling so much. I'm curious, how are you managing that, and then maybe leading a little bit into that US strategy as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it looks easier on paper than in reality. It is so hard to conquer a new market, especially with competitors, strong competitors in that place. And I guess depending on the product as well, but something that like equity that touches deep on the finance, legal, and all of that. It's not a online picture sharing platform where there's not too much to adopt it to different countries. We have to do a lot of work to adopt our product, and understanding how to adopt that is a humongous challenge. It even became more clear to me when I was in London how different our product needs to be there, with how everybody speaks about equity and think about the entrepreneur journey. So we've certainly, and the advice, or what I've heard always in the beginning, before we went expanding globally in a proper way. So we kind of make the product work everywhere, and kind of try to attract in a fully playbook go-to-market strategy in multiple countries, and then we kind of narrow it down more and more until we selected 2 cities in the US as a core focus. And from then on, we started winning. But the advice that was given was always one of the co-founders needs to be there. And so we kind of waited quite a lot of time before we probably went international to make sure we we're moving towards the product market fit, had conquered that quite well in Australia, and the product was really working and scalable and all of those things, until we felt, okay, let's add the 10 times complexity of going into a new country. And then again, figuring out, getting those learnings that for cake, that's about going to a few cities, and then being very, very deliberate on how we do that. And I think there's no right way. Each startup has to figure out their way. There's of course a lot of experiences from go-to-market strategies to tap into. But for us, for example, you also have to speak to your strengths. And the way we had built our brand in Australia, and for me, like any startup to be successful, they have to have an incredible brand and they have to have an incredible product. These things overlap, but there are two things that need to be successful for you to create an exponential growth. So you have to creating that brand. How we did that in Australia was really through kind of partnerships, getting a lot of people to support cake. So you could almost say building community, even though we weren't like maybe talking about it then like that at that time, but definitely through partnerships, and then boots on the ground, Jason running around and talking with a lot of people and helping a lot of people, and then trying to automate that through events and scaling those efforts. So taking all our learnings that we've done in Australia and then compressing them with a small budget and then very targeted in the US, which has involved him going over there multiple times. As you've seen, we even sent our CMO and our CPO over there as well, and we're going to send our head of partnerships over there as well. So you could choose to move there. For us, Silicon Valley and stuff is a very expensive place to stay in, and it's a humongous sacrifice for the family unless you can align that with a co-founder that wants to move there. So if you have the money and the family and everybody wants to do that, that's another way to do it. But we've kind of shipped Jason over there a lot, and he's done an incredible job on opening that market. And then, of course, part of building the ongoing boots on the ground there is building these supporters that are always there, going to events and all of that. And soon we'll hire a person there as well, so we can have essentially a co-founder that can go and open new markets and then set it up, and then it will run by itself. So we don't have to fly there all the time. So again, we compressed the time it took in Australia, in the US, and that's really working. It's fantastic to see the growth. Again, both in the brand awareness, where you have to, for a product like cake, build trust for startups to want to sign up and start paying cake, especially among competitors. So they will go fast, evaluate between different competitors and cake, and then choose cake too. So if they don't know, if they haven't heard about cake, it's very difficult to have enough trust. So
you found that you've had to make large scale product changes and messaging changes, or did you what did you find in that transition from Australia to the US?
Yeah. So looking at the back view, we can almost say we spent a quarter of learning and a quarter of adopting the product. So I feel we had to do a lot of product changes. So not in the core engine. The core engine was set up so that it could work in multiple regions from the start. The contract engine, I'm getting into the more technical details, but that needs you can't just replicate the whole code base. Then you're running two companies. So that you have the core pieces, and for us, that's the contract engine, and setting up the architecture of the database so that different companies with different compliance requirements can easily, our platform can support that. But the way you talk about equity and the way you build the content and the way people learn about you, their interactions at each touch point with the product or the company, all of those interactions can make or break whether they get to the next step of signing up, if you look through the funnel. So we had to adopt the language a lot, and we're doing some guesses that were kind of wrong. So it all comes down for me to how fast can you learn. So that's sometimes when going slow, some things can seem like you're going slow, but you're moving fast for example, directly, okay, now we have to take our CPO and he's going to talk with customers and spend quite a lot of time on that and interviewing multiple people. That can seem like going slow and to allocate a lot of time for that. But the learnings you have there will make you move a lot faster. So more than the whole copy and the content, we had to, there's pricing that needs to be changed, and pricing in itself is a humongously complex thing to figure out for a SaaS to optimize. We also had to add different types of features, and even using particular features as a hook to get the first kind of foot in the door as a value to a new startup that is signing up on the platform, and then you start giving them the more core values and kind of get them on the platform and getting the ongoing value from the platform.
And you're only early in this US journey, but in hindsight, for fellow entrepreneurs that are about to embark on their US expansion, are there some early things that you think you could have done differently that are of values to people about to do it?
Yeah, I think definitely if you can ship over a salesperson and a product person together to get those learnings in, because a lot of decisions will be based off those initial things. So I think we were trying to, you always with your short-term goals of OKRs, and you're trying to get the sales, and you're doing a lot of small changes to the product to make sure the conversions work better. And I see it, a well-working product is almost like a symphony of 100 things that together work really well. So to get to that, there's a lot of learnings. You have to create 1,000 experiments. But so all those decisions you're going to make every day on building your product and changing your messaging and creating the sales script and all of those things, you want to have those learnings as early as possible. And that is talking with customers as much as possible. I think we could be more effective at that from the beginning than we have been. I think we've done a lot of great things, but it's clear also where we could be more effective. Definitely the narrowing and thinking just opening the whole US, or we were trying US and Singapore at the same time. That was definitely for a product like Cake, not the right way. Because you might capture a couple of customers, but to get the engine working, it means the cost of acquiring that customer and the repeatability and the scalability of that customer, where you're starting to talk metrics as you're starting to build a real business. The cost of the customer, the CAC, and the payback period of that CAC, which is kind of like a debt you take that you need to recover. And whatever investment money you have, you're pouring that into your go-to-market to acquire those customers. So as you start having some numbers to measure, your goal is to bring that CAC and the CAC payback period down, so that you can take the next step of growing in the market, where the cost of acquiring customers is high. But if you've proven that's going down and it's a good number, then you can attract investors to invest in, say, well, it cost $1,000 to acquire a customer. We paid back in 8 months. 1 million will buy us 1,000 of those. Let's go.
It's amazing, actually, how many companies we see that have already started to embark on their scale-up strategy who don't have a good hold on what those numbers are for them. So I think that's a really critical point. Just to change tack slightly, you've made a couple of references so far about the sacrifice that founders need to make as part of their journey. I think you mentioned imposter syndrome once as well. And can you maybe, I'm sure there are very specific personality traits that have made your choice to take this journey easier. But it's also a tough one. Can you talk about maybe some of the strategies that you use to manage that stress, or perhaps even that it can be a bit lonely at times? And I guess even if there was do you have advisors? Do you have mentors? Do you have people that you admire that you sort of look at and try to see how they manage it? I'm keen to just understand your approach to that whole process, Kim.
Absolutely. That's a humongous framework, I feel.
Sorry, it's a big question.
But let's talk about the loneliness and the advisors. So I guess my brothers have been a big inspiration to me. So they started their kind of full startup journey earlier than me, and they've been extremely successful, multiple of them, which I think, if you look at statistically, it's pretty much a miracle that we all kind of being able to do this. But I have an unfair advantage there because I know they love me and I love them, so I know their intentions are right. They want to see the best for me, and they have experience of the next steps that Cake is going into all the time. So that's an incredible support that I have there. I think as taking the role of CEO, it is probably the most lonely position to be in a company. It part of that, to explain that, is that I think it's very important to be authentic. So for me, authentic is what you say, what you do, and what you think is an alignment. But as a CEO, you play different narratives to who you're speaking with. So you can't be fully authentic, or you're trying to figure out what that looks like. And the ultimate thing is that can never be weak is the belief and the strength that is there. I think the founders, and particularly CEO, has to always show that, because if that person doesn't believe, then the team will not believe. Yep. So and self-doubt will come up in the shape of imposter syndrome, and when the pain is whatever pain we're creating from the exterior world is manifesting, we will not be the best version of ourselves, or it's very difficult. So I think one of the ways, having people that you can say everything to, which you don't feel like you can do inside the company. I feel like I can say 80% and create enough of the authentic conversations and expression of who I am and where I'm at for the company and what's needed for my role. It's not about me, it's about the role that I play. But of course, there's a human being behind every role that is very important to recognize. So the last 20% I can't share with anyone because it's not constructive for the company.
You can't share with anyone in the company, but do you share that with anyone else outside the company?
Yes. So I have advisors around me, both my brothers and people that I admire, that are even not fully like CEO founders, but just have a really good rational way of seeing things, that I can put out some of this stuff, and then where my mindset might spin off too much on the extreme, and that would not be constructive for the company. And just having someone to listen to that relieves that, and even get those validations that we need to be the best version of ourselves. So both the personal and the role that I'm playing, for me, the framework that I have is a small accountability group of people that I know that they care for me, so I know their incentives, and they have complementary skills. So that means they will call my bullshit, I feel, and I trust that. So that small group plus my own mind is what I think the best framework for me to be the best version of myself, which is ultimately all that we can do as human beings. We cannot control our goals, but we can do everything to show up every day as the best version of ourselves. So that's what it always comes back to when we're too stuck in this or this needs to happen. And then there's a million little things around the health. I see you have to almost be passionate about the entrepreneur journey to avoid burning out. If you're too stuck, it has to be like this, or your role, or what other people outside tell you that you are. I think you will build a gap, and I've seen that happen with other people that I worked with. I have some fears around avoiding that and just staying very, very, very grounded always. And so I remind myself what success looked like. Well, am I doing the actions that promotes good health? So I'm not asking myself, am I healthy or not? Because that's such a, sometimes you don't feel healthy. But I'm asking myself, am I doing the actions to stay healthy? Am I doing the actions to be the best I can for my family and my friends? Am I doing the best actions for being active in nature? And I'm doing the best actions to do something big and meaningful. When I'm doing those things, even if they're small, I feel like a success. And then the other things that I can't control, I'm showing up as the best version to get there for those. So this balance between being grounded and the exterior is a difficult one to challenge. That's my framework for it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And that sort of internal locus of control or internal metric for success, I think, is really powerful. And there was a theme there that I think draws us back to the start of the conversation, which is around trust and diversity. So you surround yourself with people that you trust and who have complementary skills or opinions that might be different from you. But as long as you're in that trusted environment, it gives you, I guess, the license to listen to their feedback.
And it's something I've reflected a lot about. It's almost the ultimate love for someone is letting them influence you. So you want to be open to that, but still putting boundaries around who's the person you want to be.
Yeah,
so
choosing carefully.
Yeah. And another tool that I use when things become stressful and touches the ego or this imposter syndrome is reminding myself it's not about me, even though I'm feeling these things. It's about this thing that I'm about to do, whether it's a presentation or a difficult action that needs to happen. It's about this thing. And so I just create a little bit of space between that thing and me, and I can observe it. And then I can get the excitement from that thing instead of letting whatever fear is there overcome and say, this is about me. People will look at me. I'm supposed to be like this, all this stuff, right? It's not about me. It's about this awesome thing. And it's really exciting. So let's just show up the best we can for that thing. So that's a tool. Another tool that goes a little bit deeper is when there is pain or fear, because we are not operating the best when we're in a space of fear ever, I believe, as human beings. We want to be in a space of creativity and letting all that curiosity flow out of us. That is when we feel that pain, and it's real. We can't ignore it or remove it. But the thing we can do is bring up a curiosity about the thing that we're feeling. And that creates a little bit of space to it. And it makes it so much easier to handle that thing because you're actually pulling into something positive. I'm learning about this feeling that I'm feeling. I'm feeling so scared. I'm not trying to bury it. You can't do that. But you bring it out and saying, let me observe this thing. This is really, really amazing, actually, to feel this thing. And that helps me a lot when I have my own weak moments.
That's really powerful. And it's something Aaron has spent a lot of time working with founders to try and do, is to sit in the feeling, not run from it, not bury it, but sit in it, observe it, understand why it's causing a certain reaction or behavior. I mean, Aaron, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
no, but you're speaking my love language, Kim, around.
Yeah, Aaron's seen him. If you're listening on a podcast, his head's about to explode.
No, I'm sitting here thinking, Kim, we could do like a year's worth of podcast content on each of these parts, because it's so true. I think, we talk a lot about building trust and respect in teams so that they can be better at managing and dealing with conflict. And you've engineered that, but that starts with building trust and respect in self. And what you've just described is exactly that. And
more about this because it's one of my favorite subjects: consciousness, self-awareness. Like, obviously, any friction is an opportunity to grow, to be a better version of ourselves. And it's easier to see afterwards when we've gone through things, and then loving ourselves in that moment and saying, well, I'm going to love myself 100% for the good things and the bad things. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect, but I'm going to fully love myself, which means I'm not going to be stuck in anything from the past. Everybody, including myself, did their best with the information they had at that time. And all that shaped who I am today. And I love myself. So there's nothing from my past that I don't want, that should be different. And the same can be said about the future. You cannot control the future. So having pain in this moment because things need to be in a certain way in the future does not make sense, even though we do it as human beings. So it's coming back to how can I be as ultra grounded as possible so I can show up as the best version of myself every single day. This is the journey of entrepreneurship, and for every human being, I see every human being with the potential to be an entrepreneur. I would love to see that happen. Everybody has a vision for what's a better world, and they should have the tools and not have fear to be able to go and realize those, so we can see a much better world, much more diverse world.
Absolutely.
What a
I could
beautiful
hold this
way to-
entire conversation, but I am conscious of time as well.
I think it's important, but one of the key things underlying some of that is that at each point you're making a decision to cultivate that mindset that looks at those things that way. There is a decision, and sometimes it's hard, and it would feel better to go in a slight different direction, but you're actually making a choice.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of small pains give a big pleasure. A lot of small pleasures give a big pain. And I think I want to touch on another subject as well, which I think is very challenging for founders. I talk with a lot of founders all the time, and it always worries me to see them on a trajectory that leads towards anxiety or depression. And I think it's a natural trajectory when you have so much pressure and it's so difficult. So definitely want to see more tools for that. One of the tools that I developed as well at Cake is about building the DNA of what you're doing. So, and the way, again, analytical way of seeing it, and that's not necessarily the right way, but it's kind of good to have these frameworks to fall back on. Then you translate them into how they work for the company. But this framework takes the unique strength, the DNA of the company, and splits it up. For founders, it's very difficult to have strong conviction, have data, and have the passion. This gets all mixed up. When am I speaking what? So basically, if you can split that apart and saying our DNA is a mix of our passion, our unique convictions, and the data that comes over time. You have no data in the beginning. So you're trying to get data just by talking by customers. That's your first data before you're starting being able to measure things. You have nothing there. So you got to start with the others. And for example, investors will test you on your conviction and on your passion and on your data. But if you mix those things, because the conviction and the passion, there's no data there. So if you mix those things, it's very difficult to be able to be confident and making sure that every feedback that you're getting is reinforcing that DNA, which will take you much further than anyone. So you're not stuck in following other competitors or anything. You're building out your unique DNA for your startup. So as you, over time, you gather more data. So you feed that in to build more and more conviction. So, but describing the things, this is my passion, and please test me on it. Am I waking up? Am I doing every day this thing that I'm saying I'm going to do? Do I have the passion for it? Do I show that behavior? And if not, you want that tested so you can build stronger and stronger on that. My convictions, where do they come from? Well, I have this and this experience, and I see the world in this unique way, which investors will test you on. Well, what is that conviction? And you don't have any data in the beginning. So you're tapping into your unique vision on the world, which can come from experiences and from what's on the team. That's the strength you have, which will make you unique in the world and much better than your competitors, because they don't have that. And then you build data all the time. So having that framework for me helps a lot to speak the different language. Are we speaking passion now? Great. I'll prove that to and get that tested. Or are we speaking data? Great. This is our latest data. So that's my way of dealing with that.
I love it. I think when we reflect and put together the show notes, there's around about 11 individual podcasts that we will get you back on, because there's some really deep stuff. But I guess what's important for those early stage businesses that are looking for a tool to harness their equity, you couldn't say there isn't passion behind this project.
Mm.
And what you bring with this product.
And more than removing the friction, it's about bringing out the motivation value. That it's, and team that is aligned around a mission that is diverse is an unstoppable force for good. So the equity needs to really, really turbocharge that. And that's what we do at Cake.
So I think, Kim, we'll give you back your morning time. I know you've given up what I think your calendar said was thinking time this morning to come on our podcast. So I appreciate that you've given up that creative time, that you just explained why that is so important, and we're really appreciative of it. But we will put in the show notes your website, a mechanism if anyone is interested in the Cake Equity platform, how they can reach out to you. But really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us today. And I definitely think we'll need to get you back to dive a little bit deeper into some of those topics. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support from all three of you and the whole tribe team. It's just been phenomenal. Please, if you can help, that would be supporting us on Product Hunt, and get anyone that you think
Yes, I've done that already.
of cake on Product Hunt. That would be fantastic. On the 26th of July, we're launching that. So that would be an awesome support. But really, really appreciate your ongoing support, and I can't wait to dive into some more details about these subjects.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
That's awesome, Kim. Thank you.